Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Duston Yugioh deck profile for August 2024. I've been wanting to update the Duston deck for a while. This is always one of those gag Yu-Gi-Oh decks that just come off as a pretty big, troll deck, just like your opponent doesn't know what this deck does, and by the time you set up the play for what the deck is meant to do, it's already too late. You've given your opponent a bunch of Duston cards, but in turn, you've also given yourself your powered up boss monster to then defeat your opponent all the easier. Like I said, been wanting to update it for a while. Happy with the changes I've made since the last update, so let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the 3-ofs for the Duston monsters, running 3 copies of House Duston. With this card, when this face-up card on the field is destroyed by your opponent's card, either by battle, and if it was face-up at the start of damage step, or by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon any Duston monsters of your choice from your hand and or deck to anywhere on the field, but you must special summon an equal number on each side. So the main play is to give your opponent monsters that cannot be, utilized in any good manner, but in turn, you're also setting up many different Fiend monsters for you to then make use of with other cards like Goblin King, or Star Dustin, depending on the play we want to go for in the deck also, but we'll go over each in just a bit. For the other 3-of, we are running 3 copies of Star Dustin. This is one of our bigger boss monsters that we can make use of in the deck. It cannot be normal summoned or set. It must be special summoned from your hand by sending any number of Dustin monsters from you control to the graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card's attack and defense each become equal to the number of monsters sent to the graveyard for its summon, times 1,000, and your opponent cannot flip or special summon any monsters or activate any set spell or traps on the field. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, destroy this card. So the big play is for you to always have less monsters than your opponent, which may be a little easier if they make use of those Dustin monsters for an extra deck summon. But once again, as I said, some of the Dustins are limited to what they can be used for. So aside from link summoning, which is the one takeaway where you're giving your opponent free resources, but still, if you put one of your opponent's Dustin monsters in attack position, Star Dustin can hit that monster alone for 5,000 power at its max potential, since you send 5 Dustin monsters on your side of the field to the graveyard, and you have the 5 on your opponent's field to do so as well. And then also just restricting for the fact that your opponent cannot flip or special summon any monsters or activate any set spell traps on the field will limit them for their special summon to begin with. So even if they do have those Dustin monsters, you can swing with Star Dustin, but then they'll have to go on to the defense the following turn, because a lot of times you're just going to want to place their Dustin monsters in attack mode, switching them to defense, and then having to deal with your Star Dustin on the field, slowly dwindling away their other Dustin monsters. For the other Dustin cards, we're on 2 copies of Red Dustin. It cannot be used as fusion, synchro, or exceeds material for a summon while this card is face up on the field. It cannot be tributed, and when this card on the field is destroyed, the controller takes 500 damage. So this is one of the better cards to give to your opponent, because you have the burn damage for them to resolve as well. We have the additional copy in here just for the fact that you have to summon an equal number on each side of the field of your choice, anywhere on the field. You must special summon an equal number on each side. There are some other preferred Dustin that we can give to our side of the field. One of the other options for them is the Green Dustin, with this one having the same restrictions, and once again it cannot be tributed, and when this card on the field is destroyed, the controller targets one spell or trap they control and return that target to the hand. Well, one of the better ones to give to yourself, just having a bounce power. We do have some other cards for the return that help, like Magicalized Dustin Mop with this card. So just another 2-of Green Dustin. Same with Blue Dustin, having the option of when this card to banish one random card from its controller's hand face down, taking away a resource until the standby phase of the next turn, so limiting more potential plays for that person's hand. And also 2 copies of Yellow Dustin. For this card, when this card on the field is destroyed, the controller targets one card in their graveyard and shuffles it into the deck. So once again, another potential good card for you to have. The big play, though, is you're going to use your Dustin monsters to set up Star Dustin or power up one of your other Dustins also. And then also the 1 copy of White Dustin, just because we want to give us one less restrictive Dustin monster as well. Because if we summon House Dustin, we can even go for a rank 1 Xyz play, since House doesn't have any restrictions for its summon as well. So White Dustin and House Dustin can be 2 that you give to yourself as less of a restriction to summon. And then along with Star Dustin, we're also running 3 copies of Goblin King. It really doesn't matter if we can't go into the extra deck for plays with our Dustin monsters while they're on the field. With Goblin King, while you control another Fiend-type monster, this card cannot be attacked. The attack and defense of this card are equal to the number of Fiend-type monsters on the field, excluding this card, times 1,000. So if you place a Dustin monster in attack position on your opponent's side of the field, if you gave you and your opponent each 4 Dustins each, it has to be the equal amounts of the House Dustin, remember that, you can then summon out Goblin King for your normal summon, and then swing into the attack position Dustin monster your opponent has for the game-winning amount, having 8,000 attack since it doesn't include itself, and the 4 Dustins on each side of the field. I also run 2 copies of Stygian Street Patrol. While this card destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the level of the destroyed monster times 100, but we mostly use it for the option of you can remove it from play in your graveyard. Just special summon 1 Fiend-type monster with 2,000 less attack from your hand. So this is just another way to get out cards like Goblin King or an additional House Dustin on the field, because once again it has to be face up on the field. So if you use the Stygian Street Patrol to summon it in face up defense, then your opponent can swing into it, and then you can have your initial Dustin setup to go for as well. And then lastly, the 1 Stygian Security. When it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 level 1 Fiend-type monster from your deck. So once again, very similar, just having another Fiend-type option to special summon onto the field for us to grab for another level 1 monster. We do run options like our 1-for-1 to special summon out some of these cards, so I would say a better target option to then rely on also. For the spells, running 3 copies of Where Art Thou. If you control a level 1 monster, add 1 level 1 monster from your deck to your hand. During the end phase of this turn, take 2,000 points of damage if you did not normal summon the added monster. But I would say one of our best ways to search out our Stardust into our hand, just being able to add this card. And even if we take the burn damage, we at least have one of our easier searches to add our boss monsters to our hand. And also the 3 copies of Perry Ray's Map. You, at the start of your main phase 1, add 1 monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, but half your life points after adding it to your hand. Until the end of this turn, after this card is activated, you cannot activate the added monster effects or effects of it until you normal summon that monster. So this is mostly to grab House Dustin, so we can then just add it, summon it out in the field, and then go from there with the initial play of being able to set up all of our other Dustin monsters. I also run 2 copies of Double Summon. I feel like this, along with the Stygian Street Patrol, is fine for Goblin King summon onto the field once you make use of your Dustin monsters. And also the 1 copy of Magicalized Dustin Mop. With this card having another search option for you. You can only control 1 of this card. The equipped monster cannot be attributed or used as fusion, synchro, or exceeds material. And when this card you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can add 1 Dustin monster from your deck to your hand. Search power, but just a way to equip onto one of your opponent's pesky monsters and stop it from using its own effects. I really do think it's cool that there are other Dustins. It's almost like Ojama Country for this card in the card art that maybe we'll potentially get one day. Also, the 1 copy of Foolish Burial for being able to send the Stygian Street Patrol to the graveyard to use. 1 Monster Reborn, just another resource grab from the graveyard. 1 Twin Twister and the 1 Harpy Feather Duster. Twin Twister is another way to set up Stygian Street Patrol, and this backboard clearing for your opponent's spell and traps is very important, so you can swing with your Goblin King with no fear. And then the 1-for-1, plenty of level 1 special summons to make use of in the deck also, including Goblin King. And for the traps, running 2 copies of Diamond Dustin. When a card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effects, special summon Dustin monsters from your deck to anywhere on the field equal to the number of those destroyed cards. If this card's in your graveyard, you can banish 1 Dustin monster from your graveyard to special summon this card in defense as a normal monster, Fiend, Dark, level 1, with 1,000 defense to your opponent's field. It cannot treat it as a trap, and it can only be used once while this card's in the graveyard. Summon this way, it cannot be used for tribute or material for a fusion, synchro, or exceed, but giving your opponent another additional pesky Dustin monster to then boost up either the power of your Star Dustin or your Goblin King, and also just have an additional means to have those resources ready to go. And then 2 copies of Dustin Roller. Target 1 monster on the field this turn. It cannot be attributed or used as fusion, synchro, or exceeds material. If the set card you control is destroyed, you can add 1 Dustin monster from your deck to your hand. Search power, but also more restrictions for your opponent's cards, with the last of the traps being the 1 copy of Rivalry of Warlords. Now, I know Fiendsmith are a big thing king in the format lately. But with this card, if you give your opponent Fiend monsters, and then let's say in their standby phase, activate Rivalry of Warlords, they're locked in the Fiend. If they don't have any Fiend monsters, their only real option is to, either attack your Dustin monsters into your own monsters, which a lot of times, won't be enough because yours will be on the defense, or have low attack as well. And then they'll just have to be stuck with your Fiend Dustin monsters that you gave them until they can do something better with them, which a lot of times they can't, which is why I do like running this card in the deck. And then for the extra deck monsters, I run one copy of Relinquish Anima, the one Salamangreat Almirage, the one Link Spider. This is just as an additional resource for the White Dustin to summon out a monster onto the field, because we do run Access Code Talker as our bigger, Link 4 monster for the Link 1 options, because once again, we're not restricted to using them for Link summoning in the deck. Also, the one copy of Underclock Taker, a bigger way to weaken one of our opponent's pre-existing monsters on the field, and then swing over it with cards like Goblin King or Star Dustin. Nightmare Cerberus, along with one Silhouette Rabbit, and the one Moon of the Closed Heaven. For this card, definitely useful for the Link 5 monster using this card you control, to then have this card targeting a face-up monster your opponent controls, this card points to, and if you summon a Link 5 monster using this card you control, you can also use that monster your opponent controls. So, giving your opponent those different Dustin monsters will definitely come in handy when we go for our bigger Link play. But before that, we have the Nightmare Unicorn, the Access Code Talker, as I mentioned before, and then the Underworld Goddess of the Closed World to go into. Once again, we're giving our opponent monsters, we might as well use them for some of our bigger plays also. We can't go into Xyz plays as often, but when I do, I have the one Princess Sprite, the one Slacker Magician, the one Fucho, the one Roots, and the one Zeus. We have cards like House Dustin, White Dustin, Goblin King, so still plenty of available options to be able to make these cards in the deck also. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, setting up and destroying your House Dustin is a big part of the play. And I would say one of the better resolutions is to attack and destroy this card on your own turn, because then when it's destroyed, you will summon the equal number of Dustin monsters to each player's side. Most of the times, I like to give myself a House Dustin and a White Dustin as well. And then some of the better effects for at least to benefit from our side of the field as well, giving your opponent the red Dustin for the burn damage, and then just the additional copies of the other ones to their side of the field. It just has to be an equal number of Dustins to each side of the field, so remember that as well. But then after that, when you go into your next following phase, you can either have the setup for these cards ready to go like this, but another play is if you have, let's say, the search for your Stygian Sergeant on your field as well. If this card can be summoned out with cards like 1-for-1, or even the additional normal summon with cards like double summon, you can get this card on the field along with the House Dustin. Still having this card as one of your spots on the field, you have your Dustins ready and set up. You can swing into your opponent's monster, which will still be the last spot on the field as well, to then summon out onto the field your Goblin King, and then you can swing with that Goblin King into one of your opponent's Dustin monsters, and then go for game right then and there while still in the attack phase. But still, the other play is to, once again, you're going to go into your opponent's turn, and that can be done by summoning out the Star Dustin, which can be searched out with cards like Where Art Thou, which you'll have your level 1 monster, to then be able to send these cards, summoning out your 4K monster onto the field as well, and then your opponent will be stuck into their special summon. They won't have any options to use for the special summon since they cannot, thanks to Star Dustin, and then you'll be able to slowly dwindle away their own cards on the field while you slowly build up the hand presence and other additional cards to be able to use against them also. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Like I said, I always love updating this deck. It's such a fun and clever deck that definitely, got overlooked just by it being, as I said, more of a gag deck, but all the more of a fun one to make. And I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, until next time, I'm always taking recommendations for future deck profiles. So definitely do let me know down in the comments below. And please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira, twig out.